Okay, we move onwards. I'm really excited about the title of this next presentation because I think it talks to the point around agility and adaptability that is required in these somewhat uncertain days. So next up we have Chris Carter, Marketing and E-commerce Director for Specsavers, and he will be talking about what ditching this year's marketing plan has taught me about leadership. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Paul. On the 16th of March this year, 2 weeks into our financial year, we ditched our marketing plan. And in the 4 weeks that followed, we made more progress on how we work together as a team than we had achieved in the previous 4 years. We finally removed channel silos, introducing a daily editorial meeting where we created stories and content irrespective of the media channel we were going to execute in. We finally removed a campaign-by-campaign focus, moving to always-on publishing as an approach. And actually, we achieved 110 consecutive days from the middle of March publishing that content. And we also finally stopped doing some stuff, which for us is a lot easier said than done. We also created an idea. It was open for care. It was there to challenge perception on the one hand, and it convinced 50% of brand rejectors to actually consider us for the first time. It also reassured our own customers, which really helped mitigate the trading impact for our stores across the UK and Ireland this summer. But more importantly than all of that, through focusing on this one idea, it elevated the performance of our team. It allowed us to uncover new stars within the department, or as we referred to them at the time, our lockdown legends. The team achieved more in spite of the unfamiliar remote working practices that we all found ourselves in spite of the added stress that everybody was under. And they achieved it because the old rules were gone. The perceived barriers were no longer there. And in turn, old behaviours and entrenched behaviours fell away as a result. In fact, with this freedom, we saw teams and individuals beginning to innovate and problem solve more and more. Now, they were doing this because they felt they had the permission to undo what we'd always done in the past, permission to focus on that one goal and disregard everything else, permission to make decisions quickly in the moment and sometimes get those decisions wrong. Now, I'm sure this isn't new news to many of you listening and watching today, but I find myself thinking, how do I hold on to those good habits that we've created? And how do I ensure it doesn't take another global crisis for us to make the next step change in how we all work together? So for me, the future is about rebalancing the what and the how. Less time crafting what the plan is, more time focusing on how we work together to land it. Now, I think that means fostering the right leadership behaviours so we can create that culture of collaboration, of empowerment, of wanting to go the extra mile and always improve on what we did last time. If we can create that environment, an environment in which everyone can outperform, then I think the plan will deliver itself. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Chris. Very inspiring, and it's great to hear such a brave story. I'm not sure that there are that many other organisations that have fully embraced change in quite the same way. So, I mean, you shared some of the lessons, but what would you say to some other folks out there who would say, well, we don't have that type of culture of change, we've got a legacy way of doing things? What would you say to the naysayers that say it's not that easy to change?
I would say to a certain degree, we were the same.
Right.
And I think what the external shock and what that pandemic and what that challenge has given us is through adversity to have to change and to have to work in a different way. But I think even for us, we can start to see some of those old behaviours and some of those old comforts coming back into our own working practices and into how we function as a team and with our agencies. So we have that same challenge to continue to work as hard as we can in really embedding those new behaviours.
And when you're planning for next year, what messages will you be sending differently to your partners and agencies about what you expect from them from a behaviour perspective?
I think one of the things we did when we came out of the initial part of the crisis was sit down with the whole department and actually discuss what worked and what didn't. And that in turn has led to us really defining the behaviours that matter to us as individuals and as a department. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we'll be doing with our partner agencies is sharing that with them so they can understand how we're intending to work. We're a department of around 85. How we're going to work together as a group of 85 individuals, and how we want them to come on that journey with us, and really embed those own behaviours in their account teams and in their teams that support and service us.
Great. Makes a lot of sense. And a question from the audience. You talked about the Lockdowns Legend programme. Are there any other insights you can share that came out of that have changed your marketing strategy?
I think one of the big sort of realizations for us was, I think, the amount of time that we invested every autumn and every winter planning for what we were going to do the following year. And typically we would start with the plan from the previous year. And I think what that tended to do was just lead to this sort of treadmill, right, of trying to improve on where we'd already been, rather than ripping up the rulebook altogether. What March did for pretty much every brand was do that for them. I think that has been a real learning for us, to actually think about how much time we really need to invest in planning, bearing in mind how much could change. I think one of the big things as we head into next year is how we embed flexibility into absolutely everything that we do, so that we are in a position where we can pivot and do whatever we need to do for our stores and for our partners across the country. Great,
very inspiring. And like, when you talk about these things, there's often things that I always think you start new things and you have to stop some other things that maybe are bad behaviours. Are there any things that you'd say you've told your team to just stop doing that, other than planning everything from the same rule book or playbook as last year? Any other insights you can share?
Yeah, I think the thing we found most difficult was stopping stuff, both within department practices and stopping stuff that has always historically been on our plan. So I think for me, that point around actually focusing on the one or two things that really matter and disregarding everything else is absolutely critical, because if you end up with too much stuff on that list, you will never really see that step change, and you'll never deliver and fulfill the potential of the top three most important things that you've got for the year.
Absolutely. I really enjoyed the conversation, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers.